Welcome to the FNO InsureTech podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsureTech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hey, podcast world, you guessed it. It's another episode of FNO InsureTech, your favorite podcast, bar none.
Out of all the podcasts.
Of the literally hundreds of thousands or maybe millions of podcasts that there are in the world, we know this is your favorite.
We know it.
And why else would you be listening to it if it wasn't your favorite?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's hot off the press. You're listening.
Joe Rogan listens to it.
Probably. You can't prove he doesn't.
Everybody listens to our podcast.
Conan O'Brien probably.
Conan O'Brien listens to our podcast. Yeah. Jimmy Fallon listens to our podcast.
Probably.
Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
Yeah. We assume.
No. They called me and told me.
Oh, you know.
And let's see. We're the intrepid searchers of truth. So let's go on.
All things true on this podcast.
We have the CEO of our company doesn't miss an episode.
Yeah, that could be true also.
We're back. We're here with another incredible, amazing, thoughtful, and memorable episode. And maybe the first member of the 4-Time Club?
I think it is.
I think it's the 4-Time Club.
Yeah. What do we call it? We just call it the Smoking Jacket Club?
That's 5 times.
Oh.
Until we get somebody who's been on 5 times, and then we make it the 6-Time Club.
we just keep pushing it out.
Because with our budget, we'd like to give them the Smoking Jacket.
Nice one.
Really nice one.
Yeah.
There's just one problem.
Right.
We have no budget.
None. But today is a super exciting, and you normally say it even bigger at the beginning, but it is a great episode. It is a long-time guest. Super episode.
Okay, you're going. Keep going.
Well, today we have Mike Fulton, president of, I don't even know.
Property Estimating Solutions.
Well, you see that changed, and he's going to talk about that. So Property Estimating Solutions at Verisk.
Right.
Mike is back on. Like we said, we normally get to talk to Mike right after the conference, right after he walks off stage. He walks right to our booth, and then we get to talk to him. But here we are a few months out, and we're going to get to talk to him about what's going on there at Verisk, what's going on at Property Estimating Solutions, formerly known as Xactware. We're going to get to talk about what it's like working post-COVID, in office, out of office. We're going to get to talk about all sorts of things.
And for all you startups out there, this is a company founded in 1986 that was one of the first, maybe the first, who knows, InsureTech, one of the first. Today is a company that produces millions and millions and millions of dollars of revenue.
Yeah.
And part of a larger company that produces billions of dollars of revenue. And so this is what your little startup, your crazy little startup can become. It's possible. Stick with it. Stay with it. You could become this. And Mike has been with Verisk for almost the entire journey and has wonderful perspective and background and know-how. The man knows the industry maybe as well or better than anybody, and we're honored to have him on again.
Yeah, I'm excited. Why don't we jump into the interview?
Go ahead, say it.
I'll say it. So without further ado, here's our episode with Mike Fulton, president of Property Estimating Solutions at Verisk.
Hey, everybody. We're here once again with the guy who's been on our podcast the most, besides Lee and I. Yeah, is that fair? That's probably.
I would say his name has been dropped by far the most on this podcast.
Okay.
All good.
Hoping that's a compliment.
It is.
We'll find out in a minute. Mike Fulton, president of Xactware, president of Property Estimating Solutions at Verisk.
Yes, sir.
Not the president of Xactware, the president of Property Estimating Solutions.
Yes, the artists formerly known as Xactware.
So this is the first time we've had a podcast since the official name change.
The sunset of Xactware, as I read on the website.
Are people getting used to it? How's that going?
So this is my first rodeo, I guess, for lack of a better word, going down and doing this type of a thing from a branding shift. And I'll tell you, when Xactware was acquired by what was then the ISO organization, later became the Verisk organization, the model at that point was, hey, we acquired all these great brands. Let's just keep them in place. And Xactware's got quite the brand, but what's got a greater brand recognition than Xactware is actually the product Xactimate and Xactanalysis. And so with that understanding, the company's trying to align things. There was a lot of discussion on whether we should be a house of brands versus a branded house.
Okay.
And landed on the latter of the two. I think there's some real positive aspect to it. It does take some time, though. I mean, it takes some time to shift the muscle memory. Property estimating solutions is a lot more syllables than Xactware, and people have to get used to that. And I think the transition that we're trying to put forward now is to brand us as property estimating solutions with a parenthetical after it that says Xactware, at least for the first year or so. So I think it's going well. I mean, you could always say, could it be going better? Sure. And there's a lot of people that will always come up and say, gosh, why did you guys do that? It's always a debate. I feel good about it. I mean, I've been with the organization. I'm in my 30th year, believe it or not. So, I mean, you cut me, I bleed X's at this point. So it's something I've got to get past, but it's okay.
I think it's not the actual product that's changing. It's just the name, right? It's just that Xactware name. You still offer the same product. It's still
the brands are still there from a product perspective, right?
Although the product changes on a regular basis.
Well, yes.
Fair to say.
Incremental change, innovation will always continue. But the product name, ideally where the brand exists and their brand recognition is, should stay.
We were talking offline before we started today, and this is the great thing about having Mike on. He's thoughtful and has ideas and opinions about things. And we were talking about, I think it's fair to say we're coming out of COVID. That's probably a 2-year process in its own right.
Yeah.
But certainly things aren't where they've been. Like, for example, I was at my daughter's house and she had her cleaning ladies were over, and they've been coming to her house all through COVID with masks on, and they didn't wear masks today. And that kind of really struck me. And so things are evolving. And so give us a minute on how things are changing for you guys, for Verisk Property Estimating Solutions, in a slowly but surely post-COVID world.
Yeah, it's a timely question. I think it's not just us. I think it's everybody in the tech space, or everybody that has the ability, frankly, to service their customers and collaborate amongst their teams in a remote situation. How do you migrate back into the old world? And by that same token, what is the new world? I hesitated for so long to say the new normal, but I mean, guess what? We're still trying to figure that out. Yeah. But we've got a large building footprint in our area. We got multiple satellite offices, but our primary footprint is there in Lehi, Utah. We've got a 200,000 square foot building, had close to 700 employees in that building. Pre-COVID, we were pushing capacity. And, so it's hard when you start hitting 85, 90% capacity in a space like that, things will slow down because you're trying to shift bodies around and keep teams together so that they can collaborate and so on. And, pre-COVID, we were thinking, man, we're going to have to evaluate whether we either move into what we call a desk sharing and move people into a hybrid situation, or we're going to have to lease additional space. And then COVID happened, and, we found, with some exceptions, yes, we can manage people in a remote situation. We can onboard people in a remote situation, and people can be productive in a remote situation. And now as we're coming back in, and like you said, Rob, thankfully coming out of this thing, it's how many people are going to continue to want to work 100% remote.
Yeah.
And how many are going to want to be in office, and how many days are they going to want to be in office? And what do we as a management team, what limits do we want to put on that? If you're within, there are businesses that are saying, look, if you're if you're within X number of miles of the building, you're expected to be in office. We're not necessarily doing that. We're saying that if, there are other businesses that are saying we are expecting everybody to be in only 2 days a week and no more than that. And, there are employees who don't have perhaps the best situation to work from home, whether they're sharing an apartment with somebody else or whatever. And so it's to their benefit to be in office 5 days a week. So we're trying to be flexible with it. But I mean, in the end, what it's looking like now is that we don't need 200,000 square feet. We've got to look at right sizing for today and then plan on growth. And do we expect this thing to change? I mean, we're probably in the, out of the 700 plus local employees, there's 100, give or take, that want to be 100% remote. And the rest of them, want to be, for the most part, hybrid, meaning 2 to 3 days a week. And we're going to be flexible with that. And we're going to move into what's called a desk sharing, office sharing, or some call it hoteling, where people just, your manager is coordinating. And if Mike's going to be in office on Monday and Wednesday, and Lee's going to be in office on Tuesday and Thursday, and, perhaps we use the same desk. Yeah.
I mean, so what is your desire? I mean, what do you think is the right work at home, work in office mix? Is it better to have people in the office? Is that a better environment?
In the tech space, and I could see it. I went to college to become a computer programmer, to be an engineer.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'd like this. I was in the construction industry at the time, and I wanted to get a secondary education, and went in to learn. And this was back in 1980, actually late 1980s. So the PC was just starting to come up, and a lot of developers coming into the industry. And I decided that wasn't for me. I like interacting with people.
Yeah.
This is great. Face to face, even better.
Right.
But there are some people that are really, really good at being a computer engineer, and they don't want distractions, man. I mean, they're focused on this thing. And those are great examples of people that can be highly productive working from home, even more so.
I agree. I mean, there are some jobs out there that really lend themselves to just being in that tunnel and just focusing, on the work. But there's a lot of jobs, a lot of management jobs where you need that collaborative work environment. Yes. You need that little bit of overheard, right? I overheard you had this problem. I can help with that. Or I also have that problem. Maybe we can work together to solve it. And those are the things you miss.
Well, and certainly you mentioned managers, and I think managers ought to be in office because even though their entire team might frankly be 100% remote, managers should be collaborating with other managers, and they should be collaborating with their directors and their AVPs and so on. But I'm the same way. I mean, if I'm in a group environment, I can stand up and lean over the cubicle and ask somebody a question, especially somebody that's new. And this is what's hard, is getting somebody to feel like they are part of the organization, part of the team. You really have got to assign them a mentor. That mentor's got to reach out to them and be very proactive with them in order to be able to do that. Otherwise, it's just tough.
Right. I completely agree with you on that.
Mike, I'm wondering if, in your view, this is just one man's opinion, is it changed forever? Did the pandemic change things forever? Do you think that the hybrid solution is permanent, or do you think as time goes on, because it's interesting in other aspects of life, you see that as time goes on, things kind of move back to the normal that existed before the pandemic. Do you think that happens with work, or do you think it's permanently changed?
That is the $60,000 question, I guess. I will say I don't know. I would like to see that it's moving back. I mean, if you've been traveling in the air, the airplanes are just as packed as they were before. It seems like it's just as tough to get hotel room space.
Harder now,
in a lot of ways, the pandemic kind of advanced the business, the way we do business, 10 years in a matter of 10 months. People are willing to engage like this. We used to get into an airplane and, fly across the country and spend 3 days out of the office for a 3-hour meeting with a customer.
Absolutely.
And now people are willing to do this.
I've done that for years and years.
People are willing to do the video call, and it's good. I will say, that being said, while it's somewhat beneficial, to do the video call. The downside of it is you're not in the room with somebody. And what's the rule? Is it 738-55? It's like 55% of all communication is like body language and stuff like that.
Nonverbal, yeah.
Nonverbal type of communications. And there's this sweet spot when you're on a Teams call or a Zoom call or whatever. When you get about 6-7 people, everybody's video on, they're engaged, you kind of hit that level and people start getting off of video, and just being audio, and, whether they've got bandwidth issues or whatever. And when you're off of video, you're multitasking, you're maybe answering an email, you're not as engaged. Plus, when you're out on a face-to-face meeting, it's like, hey, how about dinner the night before? Or we have lunch in the middle of the day. And you guys know that's where business gets done.
That's the
in those types of more informal conversations. So I don't know whether this is permanent or not. I would personally like to see us get back to more of a sense of normal, a pre-COVID normal in the technology space than we are today. And I think it will happen, but I think it's going to take some time. At some point, and we're seeing a lot of employees that just want to work remotely. And Lee and I were talking about this just beforehand, that, there are some roles that are more conducive to being in that kind of environment. There are some personality types that are more conducive to being in that type of environment. And you want to be flexible to those folks. But there are some people in some roles that like myself, I'm a people person. I like to be in office. I like to be around people. I like to engage in that way. And it will certainly take some time, especially in the tech space. I'm hopeful that it does get back to at least more of a sense of normal than we are now.
It's interesting in our work because I, like you mentioned, for years, I've taken the 3-day trip to have an hour or 2 or 3 hour meeting, but usually also with a dinner, right? A man's got to eat, Mike.
You got to eat.
That's where relationships are built.
Yeah.
In those times when you can talk about your life, whatever portion of it that may be. And our customers who are mostly carriers, our customers aren't clamoring to have us back. I don't know if you guys are finding that. They'll accept it now, but many of them aren't in the office. I've still kind of been grounded myself, but, and I'm sure.
Was there, if you were to fly out to our office, not that I would deny you anything like that, but is there just more of a tendency to say, hey, Rob and Lee are coming in, I'm going to dedicate half my day at least to these guys. Whereas when you're in this environment, it's like 90 minutes, guys, that's the best I can do. Because everybody else wants 90 minutes as well. And it does make it a little bit more difficult, but you're right. I mean, building a relationship is tough in a virtual environment, a lot tougher than maintaining an existing relationship that's already been built in an environment like this. But the hope is that it's a temporary thing. So who knows what's going to happen. I know we're in a little bit different. I mean, our industry, it requires people to be out in the field, requires people to be, knocking on front doors and going through people's homes. In the tech space, from a development perspective, a QA perspective, client services, things of that nature, it's okay to be remote because you're on the computer, you're on the phone dealing with clients. But from my perspective, being in office, things just seem to progress a little bit more smoothly and a little bit more quickly because you can engage in the informal conversations between meetings.
I used to hate that. I've been remote for years, and Lee and the rest of our executive team at 470, when we were 470, we're all in the office in Waco. And I always hated what I was missing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. You missed a lot.
Not lunch at Leal's. I never missed that.
No, but you're right. You missed the water cooler talk. You missed how are you this morning? Great. What do you think about this project? That's pretty cool.
And frequently the genesis of ideas.
Yeah.
That get thrown around. Most don't sprout, but some do. And those are exciting to be a part of. Let's switch gears here and talk about property estimating solutions, or do we call it PES, or I don't know what we call it, but
yeah, property estimating solutions.
Okay. We say all three words. So
we're in the middle of a rebrand. We got to keep going with it.
Yes.
Give us a minute Here's your chance to talk about whatever you want to talk about property estimating solutions. What's going on? What's new? What's exciting? What you do?
Great. And I, again, guys, always appreciate the opportunity. There is a lot going on within the industry. I mean, apart from just inflation, supply chain issues, which impact not only our industry, but are impacting everybody in a real sense. I mean, the price of gasoline goes up, everything goes up.
Right.
Yep.
Right. It's just because everything has to be delivered. It has to be, either mined or pulled from the ground in some way and then distributed and manufactured and so on. But we're dealing with that. There's a lot of really exciting things that we're shifting to on the building cost data that we offer to be more predictive, so that we can look forward, 3, 6, 9 months out to help both insurance carriers set reserves and help contractors to make a better determination of, if I write this estimate and give it to you today and you're not going to have me start work for 45 days, this is what you may see as an impact in price. And let me just set that out in front of you right now. From a technology perspective, we're continuing down the road of automation, and all that means. Most of the incremental automation tools that we're able to put in place today, they're heavily reliant on the hardware on which they reside. And I will say the mobile technology is just advancing at such a much faster rate than any kind of desktop technology. So when you see some of the really cool advancements that are being put out by the Property Estimating Solutions Group, whether it's the ability to measure and diagram rooms or entire floor plans, and identify materials, identify objects, identify damage, all of that leverages the hardware on which it resides. So either the mobile devices or the handheld devices, the tablet devices, or so on. So I'd say that's key for us, is that type of work that the people in the field can appreciate. On the back end, for those that are in office and managing claims, managing businesses, the analytic aspect of it, how can I take that data that comes back in and better slice and dice it so that I can see how my business is operating, so that I can make appropriate decisions, see how I'm comparing to my peers in the industry, so that I can have that competitive edge or whatever. But that's everything really centers around that, our customer, and obviously our customer's customer. I mean, everything that we do is intended to get a consumer, get a check in their hands more quickly and get them back in their homes more quickly once they've experienced damage. And so the more we can support our customers supporting their customers, then we're going to be successful. But I know that's very high level, but I would just invite people to watch some of our webcasts on the things that we're producing. But I would say at some point, are we going to get to a point where somebody can scan a room with their iPhone or with their tablet and have that automatically generate an estimate? Absolutely. And it's not that far off.
Really?
Isn't that crazy to think about?
It is amazing.
I think it's so interesting because, for years, I used Xactimate for years, 15, almost 20 years. And I remember hearing about the day it'll come when, it'll be able to just write an estimate for you with a photo. And it was just, nobody really thought that could ever happen, but we're getting there. We're getting to where the technology, you can see it. I mean, I can see the roadmap, and it's companies like you who are really bringing it, all together.
Well, and ideally that shifts things. I mean, you guys are part of a TPA organization. Yeah. How does that shift things for your end of the business at some point? How does it, as a contractor, as a restorer, how does it shift my business? Do I start marketing myself more directly to the consumer?
Yeah.
Because if the consumer can submit a first notice of loss and take some photos or video with their tablet and have that generate an estimate, and the carrier direct deposits a check in their bank, now I got to go find a contractor.
Right.
The days of perhaps I want to be cautious, but it shifts how we've got to think about what we're going to be doing and what kind of service we're going to offer, and how we follow through with those.
Yeah. And we were talking with somebody just the other day about how the auto world is that. The auto world is the phone in the hand and the insurer taking the photos and direct depositing, but property is just taking a while. It's just taken a while to get there because I guess it's so much different, right? A Toyota is a Toyota, but a home is absolutely not a home.
Well, and this is where we run. That's a key point, Lee. So this is where we often, because a lot of folks at senior leadership within carrier organizations, when you think of the claims perspective, auto claims by sheer exponentially higher volumes occur at a greater volume than property claims. And so often when you're looking to put someone in a leadership perspective in the property end of the business, they come from the auto end of the business because they've just got more of a wealth of experience from handling claims. But it's a different animal. I mean, there's a finite number of cars, each with a finite number of parts. Coverage issues are much less challenging. Right. Labor issues, you can literally put out a labor rate schedule that it should take this many hours to replace an alternator on a 2004 Toyota Corolla, and it doesn't matter whether the guy's in downtown LA or in Oklahoma City. They're in a shop that's heated in the winter and air conditioned in the summer, and their tools are never more than 25 feet away. And it's a different model on the property side. Every home at least has the potential to be, and many are custom.
Right.
I mean, even if you and I are living next door to each other in the same home built by the same builder in the same year, chances are one of us is remodeled and it's now different than the others.
We just heard today or saw a notice today, I assume you've heard it, maybe you haven't, that Flyreel was just acquired by LexisNexis.
I haven't read the full release. So I did see the blurb though.
Fascinating. They're about using the camera on the phone to recognize what's in the picture. And these kinds of technologies are, I guess, supported by AI, will be able to populate an estimate. I mean, it's coming.
We've built a technology. We actually showed it at Elevate a couple of years ago, but it started where, and I think this was
2019.
Losing track of years. It may have been 2019, may have been 2020. Yeah. You could take your phone and point the camera at a thing and it would say, oh, that's a calculator, add it to the estimate. Oh, that's a space heater, add it to the estimate. That's a lamp, add it to the estimate. And now you can scan the entire room and it picks up everything at once and add 30 things to your estimate. And that's great when you're doing, pack out, cleaning, storage, things of that nature. Replacing is a little bit more difficult because now I got to say, is that a Sony TV or is that a Vizio TV? Mm-hmm. The cost to clean them is no different, but the cost to replace them is quite different. Right. And that's where the AI comes in. And it also comes in on the structural side, because if I look at, if I'm scanning this room and I say, well, that's 5 1/4 painted baseboard, is it MDF or is it finger jointed pine or what is it? And, you can, if you have some other information such as the age of the home and the location of the home and things of that nature, you can start making some intelligent decisions about that. Mm-hmm. Is it natural stone? Is it manufactured stone? Is it, if this wall is, if I'm in the garage and this wall's adjacent to the home, I can assume that's 5/8 inch drywall. And there are things like that once you add these additional elements in, and they could be a few other questions that you're asking even a policyholder, because they don't have to be technical. They don't have to be a professional estimator to know that stuff. You can build out an estimate that, is it going to be 100% accurate? Likely not in a complex situation. Right. But does it get you 90% of the way there? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you're estimating by exception. And then the policyholder can send that through and get it in the hands of a contractor. And then when they get out and start digging into the wall, digging into the roof, and they find some additional damage, then you've got supplements and contingencies and things like that happen. But the savings and the efficiency is just tremendous.
Tremendous. We're experimenting at our company with different ideas like that, as well as, being involved in the process of it all. And one of the things that we just can't seem to get past is that somebody has to look at it, right? So, I mean, at some point in time, somebody has to look at it and say, okay, this is what the computer saw. Does this make sense to me? But the impacts elsewhere in the process are stunning, right? Are revolutionary.
Well, think of the number of claims that an insurer deals with that are, I don't want to diminish anybody's claim, but they're kind of, when you think of like glass breakage or, somebody stole a bike out of my garage, it's small things that they may not even go over the deductible,
right?
But they've got to deal with them. And you can start automating things like that and creating a settlement real quickly. And you can get some significant savings for insurers from that perspective. And like you said, ultimately, whether it's an auto mechanic or a body shop or the contractor that's going out and doing the restoration, somebody's going to have to go on site and strap on a tool belt and figure out how to take the thing apart and put it back together and see what other damage exists. And we're away from automating that.
Not in our lifetime will they ever not have to send a crew out to do the repair.
Right. But can you make it more efficient? I mean, and ultimately from the restorer's perspective, they're craftsmen. Mm-hmm. They're good at putting things back together, estimating, negotiating. Certainly they've become good at that, but can we make that job easier for them and make sure that it's right and take some of that negotiation out of the picture?
Let's talk about a topic that we've covered before in time, but we're a few years later now. Let's talk about the ecosystem of products out there that are relevant to Xactimate. What's the latest thinking on that, on welcoming in the other tools, opening up the ecosystem, as they would say, about Xact? I know that you guys have made strides in that direction in the past, or made changes or updates. Where are you with it today?
I would say we're very open. We remain cautious. And one of the reasons we remain cautious is there's a high degree of sensitivity towards data protection. And because we're the platform upon which the industry operates, and we're storing personally identifiable information. Now, we're not storing credit card numbers or social security numbers, but it's amazing what people classify as potentially sensitive information. You know, the stuff that you could pull out of the white pages years ago is now classified as personally identifiable information. So we have to be protective of that. And as stewards of that data, we have to be cautious about who we're relegating that information to from an integration perspective. So we want to make sure that whomever integrates with us is able to meet the same stringent standards we are with regard to data security and encryption and so on. And, in doing so, there's a cost from our perspective associated with that. And so we're cautious about who we let in. We typically, we get contacted to the tune of 3-4 times a week by different startups that want to integrate with us. And that's usually our first question is, which of our customers are asking for this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's not that we're trying to prevent them from doing it, but because there's so many and there is work involved in doing it, we've got to prioritize it. And then once they have kind of that sponsor from a major client or two, then we can get into the discussion of, can you meet these standards for us, and limits of liability for cyber protection and so on. And that, unfortunately, it rules some of them out.
Yeah.
And
totally.
It's not our goal to do that. But beyond that, I would say, we've got 95 or so different integrations with different third parties at this point that are doing a number of things and continuing to open that up on a going forward basis.
I think about price lists, and one of the most important attributes of Xactimate is being able to come up with an estimate. Isn't pricing data becoming more and more of a commodity? Data commodity. Like I was on Home Depot's website recently because I'm doing a very small little remodel, and I'm going through the pages of all my choices of a door, right? And I thought to myself, here's all this pricing data right here on all these doors, right?
Yeah.
I mean, is that a current challenge? How are you dealing with that from a competitive standpoint?
No, you're right. On the material side, it's becoming more and more a commodity. But even then, it's primarily reserved towards those big box stores, the Home Depots and the Lowe's, that are very organized, and they've got stores from coast to coast. And the SKU number for this sheet of 7/16 OSB is the same in LA as it is in Columbus, Ohio. And so the material side, it's becoming more ubiquitous, as they say. The challenge on the material side is that a lot of the suppliers whom contractors prefer to do business with, because of the service that they offer and the quality of the materials that they offer, are not the ones that are that organized. So it's very tough to get that kind of information built into the system. But beyond that, the labor side of it is really where the gold is. And I think that's where we've got something that sets us apart. And it's not just labor rates, but it's understanding how much time it takes for a carpenter to install that sheet of 7/16 OSB on a wall versus a roof deck versus a gable end where you're wasting 20% of it, and so on, and knowing what the nailing pattern needs to be for the current shear strength in that local market, and so on.
Is that difficult to estimate whenever we have a labor shortage, right? Whenever inflation is high, when it's hard to find people to do the job, is that
Yes.
difficult, and how is that handled?
Yeah, so you got the labor rate. What's the hourly rate I'm paying this person plus all the burden, and therefore what's the hourly rate I'm billing for this person,
Mm-hmm.
and then the productivity. And you have to look at both of those things. You can't look at either one of them and point to a singular issue. But when it comes to demand surge, it's the actual labor rate. What do I charge for this person? And the interesting thing is when you get into a post-storm situation, well, demand surge is always directly impacted by what is the ability for the local market to service that storm.
Okay.
Right. So heaven forbid, hurricane comes into Houston, Texas, or Galveston, Texas, whatever. What's the ability for the local contractor market to service and take care of the damage of that storm? And that's always going to be directly proportional to what was the construction market like pre-storm.
Right.
If you're in a depressed time, a lot of people sitting around, you're not going to get much of a demand surge. You're not going to have to bring people in from Alabama and Oklahoma and New Mexico. But if everybody that's got a hammer is busy swinging it on a job, then you got to bring people in from other areas. Now, what we're in right now is it seems like everybody that's got a hammer and knows how to swing it is working, regardless of where you are in the country. So if we have a storm hit, where are you going to bring people in from?
That's a great question.
That's the unknown.
Yeah.
We really don't know. And it's like, we're going to closely monitor it, but like what's likely going to happen is you're going to see both a big increase in the cost of labor and then a tremendous increase in the time to repair.
Yeah, that's the thing right there is the time to repair. I see houses going up next to my house, and they used to take, maybe 9 months or 6 months or whatever to build. And it's taking 6 months to get windows alone.
Yes.
And so that just drags out. And if it's a damaged home, hopefully it's taken care of where it's not, still raining on it. But I mean, it just costs more the longer it takes, right?
If you've got to put a policyholder out of their home and pay for additional living expense for 9 months instead of 3 months, that's a significant impact. And I mean, we talk about inflation impacting everyone. And, an insurance carrier they build their premiums based upon what the expected claim cost is going to be. I had a chief underwriting officer tell me one time, he said, I can underwrite your home while it's on fire. He said, you won't like the premium, but he said, I can do it. And so premium is based upon anticipated claims. And their inflation is eating their lunch more quickly than they can adjust premiums to take care of it, let alone setting reserves. When a claim occurs today and they know it's not going to get fully paid out for another 4 to 5 months. Contractors the same way. How does contractor, I used to be able to give an estimate to somebody and say, this is good for 60 days, 90 days. Now it's like,
you don't even know that it's good that day, tomorrow.
Yeah. Or you write that into your contract if changes happen.
Yeah, that's what I saw. One of the contractors who I work out with, I was talking to him. He goes, no, every contract I write, say that's what it will be today. You can just assume it'll be a 20% or 30% more when we're done, because he's got to get paid.
Wow. It's hard.
Yeah.
So you're an auto guy, even though you're not an auto guy. You're a property guy, but deep in your heart, when you go home at night, you're an auto guy, right? True?
I like cars.
You like cars. You restore cars. Is that true?
I have done a few.
Okay.
I've promised my wife that, in order to stay married, I would kind of scale back.
You're a recovering auto restorer.
Recovering auto restorer.
It's one day at a time, Mike.
So now I just buy them that are already restored.
That's
what a novel concept.
That's like me. When you get a little bit older, you're like, nah, I really don't want to do it. I want it to be delivered. Done.
So cars, sorry, I'm going to diverge and get into the weeds, but it's more fun to restore. See, being a contractor, what was so cool about doing that is I could build a thing and I'd know it was going to be there for years, right? And people are going to get appreciation from it. And I can't sit around. That's just a personality flaw of mine. So I like restoring things. I like taking things apart and fixing them and putting them back together. And restoring an old car, I love seeing it when it's done and saying, hey, I did that. But I have come to the conclusion that, old cars are great to look at, not so much to drive every day. I do like the modern conveniences of the newer cars.
Yes.
We have an enormous event. I live right near a big park, and there's an enormous event there twice a year where I'm guessing every lowrider car in Northern California gathers, including ones that are trailered there. They trailer them.
You don't want to put miles on an old car.
Then they take them down off the trailer and drive them around inside the park. They're gorgeous, beautiful to look at. But probably not as gorgeous and beautiful to drive, I'm guessing.
Not every day.
Because they are 50, 60-year-old cars.
Yeah, the latest one I did was a 1987 Jeep Grand Wagoneer.
Oh.
With the faux wood paneling on the side, and I put a little bit of a lift kit on it. But the Jeeps, and I'm a Jeep guy, so I'm not cutting any Jeep guys out. But Jeeps have historically, especially the older ones, have got this bump steer thing where, you're going down the freeway at 70 miles an hour and you hit a bump and
oh yeah,
takes your steering wheel like that. And
not the best.
Well, it takes some getting used to. You don't have that in the.
If you should live that long.
You better just pay attention. Keep both hands. 10 and 2, baby. 10 and 2.
So would you guys ever do an auto product? I'm sure the question's been asked in the past.
Yeah, question is always asked. There are some big players out there that have the market. And, could we do it? Yes. You not only have to build the product and invest in it, but then you've got to gain the market share off of some existing incumbents that are leaders in that space. So I would say, never say never, but that's typically where we've landed, is probably that we won't. Maybe look at some other opportunities within the auto space, especially with the autonomous cars. Who knows what's going to happen to the auto claims industry with autonomous vehicles, right?
Oh, yeah.
And how that's going to impact it. Are there other areas within the auto market that might be more effective, perhaps?
I wonder if the expectation must be that there's going to be fewer accidents. The thing is that if you look at the inventory of cars today, I think I heard a number, I don't know if this is correct, that there's 290 million cars in the United States. And it's probably reasonable, right?
I think I've got 5 of them.
For you and your wife. Well, there's 5 days in the week, so there's a lot of cars, but there's a lot of properties too. I think property is harder. Homes.
Yeah, property is hard.
Property's harder.
Yeah.
No standardization.
From a perspective, sure. Yep.
Like you said, a Jeep is a Jeep from the same year until you get your hands on it, of course.
That's right. Until he lifts it up.
Even coverage issues are so much more challenging on the property side, and because of the things that you put within your home. And where the home is sitting, and a car they've built into those coverage areas and the risk identifiers, that I'm going to be driving it in whatever it is, 100-mile radius around this home, and they see the kind of accidents and so on. But it's just a different animal.
Do you feel that policy complexity, et cetera, is part of the moat that you guys have around your business?
I don't know. I don't think that's it. I think, we got into this area of the industry at the right time. The founder of our organization started it up in 1986. He was a general contractor that, he was infatuated with the personal computer that was coming out at the time and said, there's got to be a way rather than me handwriting all of these estimates, and, hired a programmer, of which there was probably only a half a dozen in northern Utah at that time.
Sure.
To write the thing. And, I think it was just a matter of right place at the right time. There are certainly were others even at the time, but we gained the market share and, did so by taking care of our customers, listening to them, partnering with them on what they need, and, going through the industry, and you're kind of leading where you should, following where you should, and so on. We still get together with our major clients shoot for at least twice annually so that we can compare roadmaps and just make sure that we're aligning. But I don't think that we've got anything special from that perspective, other than we've got the history, we've got the brand, we stay innovative, we engage with our customers. I think the building cost data is key. When you can effectively tell somebody what the cost to repair that home will be, I think the weather data that we offer is solid gold, because if you can think of, can I tell Rob with a high degree of accuracy that a claim actually did occur on that property on that date that he claimed? That's number one. And then can I effectively say, here's what it should cost to restore your property? Number two, if you can have those two things, the rest of it isn't. Certainly the innovation from an automation perspective is key, but I think those are the unique things that we offer.
So I was at your conference this year at Elevate. I have my hat, by the way. It's just over there.
I saw you. Didn't recognize you with the hat.
I know, even better looking with the hat on.
Yes.
It throws a lot of people off. You're not alone. Small this year. Just really, it was like the first conference coming out of COVID.
Right.
Yeah.
Big plans for next year? Back again?
Absolutely. Back again, and hope to be back to pre-COVID levels. If you look at some of the other recent conferences, they've been up in that range. So we had some people telling us, hey, it's a great conference, but it's kind of small. And we said, you're right, but you guys were pioneers. We're breaking the ice. Thanks for being here. It's been really helpful. We really opened that up before a lot of the insurers, frankly, had started opening up their travel plans. And so most of the attendance that we had back in February were contractors and IAs and TPAs and so on, not so many from the carrier perspective. But yeah, our goal is to continue on with that and hope it to be even bigger and better than it was in 2022. In 2020.
It's one of our favorites. Isn't it one of our favorites, Lee?
It is absolutely one of our favorites. I didn't get to go this last year, but I sure hope I'm there this year.
I think Mike asked for you to not attend. Actually.
No, I don't think so. I remember Mike saying, "I'm gonna wait for you to be at the next one."
No, we're happy to have you guys, but not that Boyd guy.
I didn't say that at all.
Last question before we go today. Chattahoochee Technical College.
Put your hand on your heart when you say that.
Where is that college located?
So it's a couple of colleges now. It's in the northern Atlanta area. When I attended, it was called North Metro Tech.
Oh, okay.
I picked it just because it was close. It was close by, but it was a decent technical school, that focused on a lot of different technology with regard to computer repair, et cetera. And they even had kind of a trade technical arm of it as well. But yeah, it wasn't changed to Chattahoochee Technical until I think 5-10 years ago. But gosh, when I went, guys, that was back.
It worked out for you.
Yeah.
I liked what it was called back then better.
North Metro.
Yeah.
I did.
I did too.
Yeah.
Chattahoochee?
Chattahoochee is the name of the river, the main river that flows through the Atlanta area.
It's a big river.
Yeah. It's a big river. And those of my age remember the old Chattahoochee raft races that happened every summer that were quite the summer event. Quite dangerous if you were in the wrong company, but it were good times. But that was back in the 70s.
Did they have a football team?
Well, do they have a football team today?
We're going to ask our audience to answer that
school.
question.
I'm talking about Atlanta. No, the school didn't have a football team.
Spoken like a Falcon fan.
Sadly. And they've made it so hard to be a fan, but I lived there for a lot of years.
We love having you on.
Always.
And are so grateful for you to make time, because we know that you're an important guy who has important things to do with his time. We appreciate that you wasted a little of it with us. So
yeah, not wasted at all, guys. I always appreciate this. It's good to connect. I love getting out in front of folks in the industry. I've been out to some recent conferences that have been really helpful, but it's good to talk. Good to talk industry stuff.
Do you have a conference to tell us about? Anything that you've gone to that you've made you say, wow, this is a really good one?
Well, I was at the RIA conference, was at the DKI conference, had some good engagement with the restorer community. And I've just been really pleased with the feedback that we've been getting from that side of the industry. I mean, we're working to move things forward. They understand the innovation. They understand the challenges on the inflation side for building cost, because it's hitting them significantly as it is everyone else. And people they like the straight. They just like people to be honest with them and let them know what's going on, and not try and sell them anything that they don't need. It's just I enjoy that. I can relate to that side of the industry. I mean, I'm a CPCU as well, so I can relate to the insurer side of the industry also. But I mean, my roots are in the construction business.
Well, as a alumni of what's currently known as the Chattahoochee State Technical College,
Google it. Google it.
it.
Yes, Chattahoochee Tech. I can't even tell you what the school song is.
Well, I was hoping that you would know what the mascot is.
Let's take that up on the next podcast.
Next year.
I agree. You have homework.
Homework.
Always a pleasure, guys.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks,
Always
Mike.
a pleasure.
Take care.
Always a pleasure to have Mike on.
Always.
He's smart. He's thoughtful. And like you said offline, Mike is such a polished professional and so able to communicate effectively. It's a pleasure to have him.
It is, and it's really neat to see what all is going on there at Verisk. Yeah, the name is changing for certain things, but they're still doing everything they can in the insurance space, and it really is neat to have Mike on to take a little time out of his day, out of his year to come talk to us, and we really appreciate that.
Absolutely, and we thank you for being with us, and hope that what you learned today is of value and benefit to you. And if it was, send us an email or just send us some money.
Yeah.
You choose the denomination.
That's right. We'll take any Bitcoin. It's
1,
right
3, or 5 cents. Please, nothing over 5 cents. To FNO InsureTech, P.O. Box, anywhere, USA.
We ought to set up like a Zelle or something, Venmo or.
We should. Someplace that people could ignore.
Yeah.
Thank you for being with us. Thank you to our production team, and we'll say to you what we say every single episode.
Goodbye, everybody.